It's never too late. You can reinvent yourself as many times as you want.
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, a podcast that empowers everyday women like you, like me, to share and learn from life's mentor moments. I am your host, Rani Alfers, and in each episode, you will meet inspiring women that understand the power of recognizing mentor moments and how those moments can change it all. These fabulous women are here and ready to share it all with you. So let's dive in. Hey, everybody. On this episode of Working Women Mentor, I am so excited for you to meet Casey Barber, founder and CEO of Rose Gold Wine. We are talking all things south of France, transporting yourself to a different place in your mind every sip you take of her wine. But not only that, her story is incredibly motivating. She's self-taught. She came from being a nurse practitioner all the way to having a wine company and so much in between. Her story will motivate you, inspire you, and it's the perfect vacation podcast to listen to because you're going to be thinking of a whole nother area that you may be in your life after listening to this episode. Let's jump in and meet Casey. Casey Barber, thank you so much for joining Working Women Mentor today. So excited to have you and talk rosé, talk business, talk all kind of things. How are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk rosé. I will say it's probably my favorite topic.
For everyone listening, tell us a little bit about you and your story and this journey that you're on in the workplace and entrepreneurism.
I founded Rose Gold Rosé. The concept came into formation May of 2017, so about 5 years ago. The first bit of wine landed here in the US in May of 2018. Fifth vintage has just landed, the 2021. So 5 years from conception and 4 years of actually having it here in the States. It is a French Provence rosé. I buy fruit from growers about 60 miles northwest of St Tropez, and I have a wonderful producer there in St Tropez in the south of France and a wonderful winemaker that I've been working with. It's just been a fantastic relationship that I couldn't be more proud or more happy about. This is definitely a third chapter in my life in terms of being an entrepreneur. It's so funny. I don't even think of myself that way. There's a little bit of the imposter syndrome people talk about. I definitely feel like I have it because people will say to me, business owner, founder, and entrepreneur. And I'm sitting there thinking, who are they talking about? Because it's not me. I think it's just very hard to own those monikers and all the feelings that come along with it. This wine was born truly out of a love for all things food and wine and a love affair with Provence rosé that began about 20 years ago in the south of France. And that love for that varietal has prompted me to make my own Provence rosé, Rose Gold. The journey to becoming an entrepreneur was a long one.
The journey from idea of Rose Gold. You said this was your third chapter and you've had some other projects that you've worked on, other businesses before. When did you get the idea and how did it end up in the bottle? Because a lot of people dream, they think it's this sexy, I want to own a winery one day. I drink lots of wine, so I could do this. So it's nothing like that, I imagine. So what has that been like for you?
It's not anything like it. And it's interesting because the love affair that I had and began for food and wine in my early 20s, many years before this came to conception, to the bottle. I had my very first glass of Provence rosé in the south of France in my early 20s, and it was new to me. I was used to my mother's pink blush wine. That was what I was familiar with. And so all of a sudden, I was enamored by this dry, refreshing, versatile, crisp wine that drank like a white, but still had the fruit and the body of a red. And that was rosé. And I looked around and I saw all of these beautiful Europeans drinking pink wine all day, everywhere I went on this trip. I came home and you got to think about that was 20 some odd years ago. I came back and that kind of proliferation of rosé at that time, that wine category had not exploded really in the US. Europeans have been doing it for hundreds of years. Americans really truly just blew this category up in the last 10 to 12. And so I came home and there wasn't a wine list at a restaurant that had a rosé selection. You can walk into any grocery store now and have a choice of 30 different rosés from 30 different places to pick from.
So when you saw this in your 20s, it was probably very like aspirational as well, where you look around and everyone's so relaxed. They're just enjoying their life. It's usually warm and sunny out in Provence. They drink this stuff
Yeah.
all the time. And so, how did you then come back to Dallas? You realize, hey, we don't even know what this is. And if we do see something pink in the glass, it's definitely not that. Is that when you started thinking
No,
of this company and kind of brainstorming and it came to fruition just a few years ago? Or
I definitely did not come back and say to myself, "Oh, I'm gonna introduce rosé to the US." That was not the case at all. In fact, other rosé brands were already on the East Coast. It was a wild journey. In my 20s, I was actually a family nurse practitioner, and then in my 30s, I stayed home to raise my 3 children. So this didn't come about until the end of my 30s after my divorce when I started thinking about, what do I wanna do? Do I wanna go back to being an FNP? Is that something I want to go and revisit? Is that even who I am today? I always say life is so backwards. You should be able to choose your major when you're about 50. Certainly didn't really know what I wanted to do or who I was at 18 when I embarked on a bachelor's and master's in nursing.
oh, absolutely. In fact, it reminds me of this stat that 80% of college students change their major 3 times when in school. And what you and I are talking about is changing our major, if you will, in life. In our age where we've had a little bit of life and professional experience behind us, we're still changing it. Casey, did you know anyone in the wine business? Was there someone you could go to and ask questions?
I knew somebody in the wine business that I batted the idea around about having a rosé brand, and this person had some contacts, and the conversation started. And when the very first bit of rose gold landed here in the US, I didn't have a clear vision. I wasn't one of these entrepreneurs where I have this burning desire to start this business and this is who I am and this is the kind of person I am and I'm this creative or I have this in my blood. I was almost 40 and I had lived a lot of life and had 3 kids and become a mom and gotten degrees in a completely different area. It has definitely become more clear and formed as each day passes. Now, 4 years into it, I feel very differently, especially in terms of where it is and what I see for it and what I've learned. This has been such an amazing period of learning.
Casey, I think it's interesting on a few points because one, it's inspirational as many people out there are changing and shifting careers over the last few years. And this happens all the time, not even with COVID. But I think sometimes getting to that certain point in your life and saying, okay, what's next? And you actually went out and did it. And that's really inspirational. I'm curious what advice you would give someone thinking of starting a business or thinking of what's next? How do I approach this? And something that had maybe helped you through that process.
I try to tell people that one thing that has really become apparent to me, and I've actually loved realizing, is that it's never too late. You can reinvent yourself as many times as you want. And just because the degree on your wall doesn't mean that you have to do that forever. And that doesn't mean that you don't change as a person in your desires or your tastes or what drives you. It's very much a lovely concept that I've been able to embrace, and that is it's never too late. I certainly am a great example of somebody that started this process after I'd already finished having my family and starting on one career that I then stopped so that I could stay at home and be with my children. Some of the advice I might give is if you want to build something worthwhile, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's not going to happen overnight. No one is going to hand you your big break. You just have to keep getting up every day and putting one foot in front of the other, even when you want to throw in the towel.
You talk a lot about mentorship, and I know that you enjoy helping other women and how much they've helped you. What has that been like for you as you've started this new company? Because I'm sure you needed a lot of advice and a lot of help.
I certainly didn't start the female owned business movement, but I have gotten on the bandwagon of supporting other female owned businesses. And as often as possible, I outsource my social media to a female owned company here in Dallas. And my web design, my graphic designer is a female. The photographers I hired to take pictures for social or for events that we're doing, I've hired females in that arena as well. I really have enjoyed being able to support my fellow small female business owners in and around my area when I've needed to hire event planners. It's been great to help support one another. We highlight them on our social media page when we utilize them, support with referrals and give one another business. It's a lovely community to be a part of.
And you didn't start out that way. It sounds like it's been a bit of a process for you to find and connect with these other women business owners and reach out to them and learn about them on podcast. Love podcasts. Did you just go out and start reaching out to people for help? Was it easy to do that? Because a lot of people are intimidated by that process.
Fear is an unbelievable motivator. And I had and still do have a lot of fear of what am I going to do if this doesn't work? And it certainly drives you to pick up the phone and reach out and ask for advice and help when otherwise might not be your natural bent to do. You mentioned podcasts. I would drive around in my car after I would drop my kids off, and I would always have a podcast going, listening to other female founders and how they built things. It was very inspirational to me just to hear their stories and where some of these women did have these visions from the time that they were young about what they wanted to build and create and how they did it and their drive and passion. And listening to some of those women just absolutely inspired me and made me feel like, okay, I can do this.
Have you noticed a trend with women in wine and in mentorship? Have you reached out to anyone in the wine industry as you've been building your company?
Absolutely. There is a trend with women and wine and with rosé. A couple of years ago, there was a study that came out about wine drinkers by gender. I may get the numbers wrong, but it was like 60% male and 36% female, something like that. 64, 36. And just in 2 years, that's already changed where it's dropped less than 50% male. And women wine drinkers are driving the growth in that premium category, which is where rose gold sits based on price. They have more buying power. Females are very empowered in terms of what they want and how they want it and how they want to spend their money. It's really great to see. And we engage with our female consumers with our social media when we do these experiences and events, pop ups. We really try to position ourselves to continue our growth. Amy Stedman is a great person to point out. She's in Austin. She's the founder of Beatbox Beverages. I've really been able to lean on her and talk to her. She founded her company about 10 years ago and she was on Shark Tank and Mark Cuban invested in her and her story is really cool. And I've had the great pleasure of becoming friends with her and she is always on the other end of the line of what kind of question I have or need. She's leaps and bounds further down the road than I am in terms of size. They have employees. It's so nice to be able, to your point, to pick up the phone and call another female founder, especially in my own beverage space, and say, hey, what do I do about this? Or how have you handled this? Or what advice do you have about this? It's a wonderful feeling to be able to say, okay, I don't feel so alone because it is scary. It's all scary.
I like that you're so open about how much fear you still have. And you touched on earlier imposter syndrome and all of these real things that you experience, as we all do, but you still push past. We can't hear that enough. I think it happens on a day to day basis. Even with people that have people, they're feeling that too sometimes. It's good to hear it. We're talking about women driving these wine buying decisions. So you have to give us a little bit of education on rosé, how to select it, how maybe the process is made for those who haven't jumped on the rosé all day bandwagon and purchased their first bottle of rose gold.
I'll start by saying that everybody's palate is different, right? If you prefer old world, which is what we refer to wines that are made in France or Spain or Italy, versus new world, which is considered more domestic, Oregon, California, different palates that prefer one or the other. And that's not to say that you can't like both, but you'll find people that are drawn more to French or Italian or Spanish or South American. There's just so many wonderful regions, and all of them, keep in mind, it's an agricultural product, and the fruit is absolutely impacted by the soil, the rocks, the temperatures, the altitude where the grapes are grown. And so all of that brings together different flavor profiles based on regions. And so it's really fun as wine drinker, whether you're starting out and learning and educating yourself about wine, or you've been drinking wine for 20 or 30 years and you have your favorites. If you're really interested in wine, you always enjoy trying something new and seeing what does it remind you of, or how does it compare to your favorite red that you drink or your favorite bubbles, or do you prefer champagne versus sparkling? And what does that mean? As far as rosé, Provence rosé in that particular region of France is a very old world, dry French style rosé. Those vines were brought over by the Greeks. We're talking old stuff here versus anywhere where vines would have been planted more recently. When it comes to rose gold, we have about 15 minutes of skin contact so that it's just a nice, perfect kiss of Provence pink. And rose gold is primarily made up of two red grapes, Grenache and Cinsault. And those are grown there in the Provence region for the specific purpose of blending Provence rosé. And so it provides the minerality and the acidity and the full body of the red fruit. It all just comes together to have a very specific Provence rosé flavor profile from that part of
Mm.
France.
I'm curious, what do you think the biggest myth about dry Southern French rosé is, or rosé in general? Are you trying to overcome any of these things as you market and sell your wine?
Absolutely. I think that maybe not as if people understand Provence rosé, they generally understand that it's dry, but I think I encounter all the time people who have a misconception that pink wine is sweet. And that is something that we've had to overcome with a lot of people that are familiar with drinking wine and people that are not. And it's just about educating people and getting them to try it. Once they get it in their mouth and they have the experience after one sip, they look right at you and say, wow, that's refreshing. I like being able to have people taste rose gold for the first time and look at me and say, wow, that's wonderful. Makes me happy.
I bet that feels really great. And because you love it so much and introducing someone and seeing them have that experience. Obviously, we want them to try your product, but not even yours, just enjoying something, seeing the pleasure from your something you're doing and it's so beautiful. Casey, how closely are you working with your winemaker? So I know you're in Dallas. They are in
Yes.
in France. So what is that like? Are you flying over with harvest?
No, and interestingly, since the pandemic, I haven't been back because France was shut down for longer than we were here in the US. And so that kind of presented a bit of a problem for travel and for being able to go meet with them. Typically, prior to COVID, I would go for harvest, which was in September, and then bottling around January. They've been wonderful people to work with. They're very in tune and well versed with what I want rose gold to be and the flavor profile. And yes, it's an agricultural product and year over year it's never going to be exactly the same, but at the same time they have worked very closely with me and very much know what I want and now what we all are familiar with in terms of rose gold people that are fans and have continued to drink it year over year. And yeah, it's a bit of a recipe that we've kind of got down. And so I'm hoping to be able to go this September for harvest, which will be the first time back since 2019.
It's very exciting to hear about your success. I know for folks in, Texas, obviously we see your wine on wine menus. I know you're in other parts of the country and growing. What do you see next for your company? Are you going to add other rosés from other regions? Are you thinking about some expansion internally?
People ask me all the time, what are you going to do with rose gold in terms of a line extension? And as of now, my answer still remains that I'm just going to focus on this one thing that I feel like I've really devoted a ton of time and energy and resources towards, and that's rose gold. I have been able to realize a real increase in distribution in the last 6 months that I didn't have before. So we're now in 26 different states, which has been an incredible period of growth for rose gold. And in Texas, you can find us at HEB or Tom Thumb, but we've really had some nice growth in terms of hotels and restaurants across the country. We're now in all the Omni hotels nationwide by the
Yay,
glass. Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
Which has been wild. We're in an amazing group of hotels in New York, the Gerber Group. So that's been a wonderful thing. The Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami carries us now, the Windsor Court Hotel in New Orleans. So we've had some really unbelievable growth in the last 6 months or so, which has been I still can't believe it that it's in 26 states. And I think that growing rose gold and in those terms is more of what I'm interested in right now than doing another type of wine.
It's nice that you're so focused on what you're doing so well and how to make that even better and how to nurture that and make sure your product and your distribution is the best that you can do. You have a wonderful rosé. And I think that comes with probably some experience now over the years. You have talked about the mentorship that you've received from all different industries and also how you seek it out. What mentor moment would you like to share with everyone today, Casey?
I think that the challenge of starting in an industry that I had zero background in, which I mentioned before, and never having had any experience with running a business, I had to lean on a lot of different people to really gain some insight while I was simultaneously gaining experience. There wasn't really a roadmap. It was very much one step at a time. I had to figure out a lot as I went along, and I still do. There wasn't really a lot of choice. It was you were either going to fail or figure it out and figure out how to make it work. And so I definitely read everything I could get my hands on about how to start a small business. And as I mentioned earlier, listening to other female founded entrepreneurs podcasts, that was incredibly inspirational. I had a couple of people in the wine industry and right here in Texas with my distributor RNDC Republic National definitely have been mentors to me in terms of teaching me about how the supplier distributor relationship works. And then in terms of owning a small business, I've asked a lot of questions of a lot of people. And so I don't know that there's been necessarily a moment that sticks out in my head as much as it is this compilation of so many people that have been willing to tirelessly answer questions, meet with me, have lunches, have coffees, sit down. And it was just my desire to make Rose Gold work as a brand as much as learn how to own my own business. Just required a whole village of people and mentors.
Earlier, you said that you did not wake up in your 20s and decide to start a wine company and start Rose Gold and have the vision for this master plan from the beginning. And not many people do. The ones that do are incredible. But I think what's so interesting is it really sounds like you have the vision for success. You're not letting anything get in your way, your fear or your lack of knowledge or your lack of contacts or anything at all. So I think your story will inspire so many people, Casey.
Thank you so much. I think that it's a story of it's never too late to reinvent yourself. And I certainly have heard no plenty of times, but only a couple of times did it make me pause and wonder whether or not I should keep going. And so the voice inside of me always told me to pick myself up and keep going. And a few of those instances, I had to drag myself back up to standing. You can't have too thin of skin or take rejection personally. You can't let it get inside your head. And just in no circumstance, my choice has been to not give up and just continue to dig deep and continue to learn as I go.
Where can everyone find you and support your business?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'm still very small in terms of being able to find me from a retail perspective. Most of my retail business is in Texas with Tom Thumb, Albertsons, Randall's, and HEB. But outside of Texas, you can definitely visit wine.com and you can find Rose Gold there. And I hope that everyone that gets an opportunity to open a bottle of Rose Gold gets transported for just a moment to the south of France. And whether you're sitting on your patio or at your kitchen table or outside by your pool, you get a little taste of St Tropez. And that transportation is the happy ending of the story for me.
What a great conversation today. And I think what resonates for me so much is not only the part that you just didn't even know what you were doing, but it's an industry that's completely unknown. And I really think of idea to bottle to glass. And I love that we're transporting ourselves somewhere else, one sip at a time, and can't wait to support Casey and all that she's doing. You can find her at rosegoldwine.com. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I hope you'll walk away feeling inspired and are thinking of how a mentor moment can help you or someone you know. In case you haven't hit the follow button to subscribe to this show, please do so. And if you love the episode, I'd really appreciate a review. You see, this review helps Apple or Spotify or whatever platform you're listening to us on know that other women just like you want to learn about the show. And it'll help us spread the word.
Let's connect on Instagram at Working Women Mentor or at Rani Alfers. You can find all episodes online at ranialfers.com/podcast and the ability to send an audiogram of your favorite mentor moments. And we respond to everyone. I truly can't wait to hear from you. Check back weekly for new episodes, and cheers until the next episode.